Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her face against the cold metal window of the research ship. The stars looked different out here, so far from Earth. She had been studying alien life for 15 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. "Captain, we're getting something strange on the long-range sensors," called out Lieutenant Kim from her station. Her voice shook slightly. It's huge." Captain Marcus Chen moved quickly to the main screen. The Meridian was humanity's most advanced research vessel, built to explore the far edges of known space. They had been traveling for 2 years, looking for signs of intelligent life. Now it seemed that intelligent life had found them first. Elena watched as shapes appeared on the screen. They were not ships in any way humans understood ships. These things looked like living crystals, each one the size of a small moon. They moved through space without any visible engines, gliding between the stars like fish swimming through water. "How many are there?" Captain Chen asked. 12 that we can see," Kim replied. "But the sensors are picking up more. Many more." Elena felt her heart racing. This was first contact, the moment humanity had dreamed about for centuries. She was here to witness it. She was here to be part of it. "They're sending us a message," said Commander Hayes from the communication station. "It's not in any language we know, but the computer is working on it." The main screen flickered. Suddenly, the bridge filled with a strange, beautiful sound. It was like music, but not quite music. Like voices, but not quite voices. Elena felt the sound go through her body, touching something deep in her mind. Then the sound stopped. The screen showed words in perfect English. "We are the Kethnari. We have watched your species for a very long time. You will come aboard our vessel. You will hear what we have to say." Captain Chen looked around at his crew. Elena could see the fear in their eyes, but also excitement. This was why they had come so far from home. "Send a reply," Chen ordered. "Tell them we accept their invitation." An hour later, Elena found herself in a shuttle with Captain Chen and 2 other officers. They flew toward the nearest crystal ship, which grew larger and larger until it filled their entire view. An opening appeared in the crystal surface, and they flew inside. The inside of the alien ship was unlike anything Elena had ever seen. The walls seemed to be alive, pulsing with soft light. The air felt thick and warm. Strange symbols moved across the surfaces like living things. They were led to a large chamber where 3 beings waited for them. Elena gasped when she saw them. The Kethanari looked almost like humans, but their skin was pale blue and seemed to glow from within. Their eyes were large and completely black. When they moved, they seemed to float rather than walk. "Welcome," said the tallest Kethnari. Its voice came from everywhere at once. "I am Thanemore, speaker for the Kethnari. We have much to discuss." Elena noticed that the alien did not move its mouth when it spoke. The words simply appeared in her mind. "You honor us with this meeting," Captain Chen said carefully. "Humanity has long hoped to meet other intelligent life." Thanemore tilted its head. "Yes, we know of your hopes. We know of your dreams. We also know of your actions." The chamber around them changed. Suddenly, Elena was looking at images of human colonies scattered across dozens of worlds. She saw mining operations tearing apart asteroids. She saw factories pumping waste into alien atmospheres. She saw human ships moving through space, always taking, always expanding. "Your species spreads quickly," Thanemore continued. "Too quickly. You take without asking. You change without understanding. You destroy without thinking." Captain Chen stepped forward. "We're explorers. We're trying to learn and grow. Yes, we make mistakes, but we're getting better." "Are you?" asked another Kethnari. This one was shorter, with silver markings on its skin. "Show them." The images changed again. Elena watched in horror as human mining operations caused a planet's ecosystem to collapse. She saw alien creatures dying as human pollution spread through their water. She saw forests burning as human cities expanded across continents. "We've been watching your species for 3,000 of your years," Thanemore said. "We have seen this pattern before. Species that grow too fast take too much. They always destroy themselves and everything around them." Elena found her voice. "But we're learning. We have environmental protection laws now. We're trying to be more careful." "Too little, too late," the third Kethnari said. This one's skin was darker, almost purple. "The damage spreads faster than you're learning." The chamber grew darker. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "Many ages ago," Thanemore said, "we made a choice. We stopped our own expansion. We learned to live in harmony with the galaxy. We became its guardians." "Guardians?" Captain Chen asked. "Yes, we protect the balance. We stop those who would destroy it." The images around them changed once more. Elena saw other alien species, some that looked like giant insects, others like living metal. All of them were being pushed back, contained, limited. Some species learned to control themselves, Thanamore explained. Others must be controlled. Elena felt sick. What are you saying? Your species has a choice, Thanamore said. You can return to your home system. You can stay there for 20,000 of your years. You can learn to live in peace, or the chamber filled with images of dead worlds, empty space where planets used to be. Or you can be removed, the purple-skinned Kethnari finished. Captain Chen's face went white. 20,000 years? That's impossible. Our colonies, our people, will be safely moved to your home system, Thanamore said. The Kethanari will see to this. But you will not leave that system again until the time of silence is complete. And if we refuse? Chen asked. The Kethanari did not answer with words. Instead, the chamber filled with a new image. Elena watched as every human ship in space simply stopped working. Not destroyed, not damaged, just stopped. Engines went dead. Life support failed. Communications went silent. This is what we do to your fleet right now, Thanamore said. If you refuse our offer. Elena looked at the captain. She could see him trying to think of another option. Any other option. But they all knew the truth. Humanity was completely outmatched. How long do we have to decide? Chen asked. The decision has already been made, Thanamore replied. Your leaders on Earth have been contacted. They have agreed to our terms. Elena felt the world spinning around her. When? Now. The shuttle ride back to the Meridian passed in silence. Elena stared out the window at the crystal ships, knowing that humanity's future had just been decided by beings they barely understood. When they reached their ship, Lieutenant Kim was waiting with urgent news. Captain, we're receiving messages from Earth. The government has announced an immediate recall of all ships and colonies. They're calling it the Great Silence. Elena looked back at the alien ships. Already they were moving away, heading toward human space to begin the Great Gathering. 20,000 years, she thought. What would humanity become in 20,000 years of isolation? Would they even still be human when it was over? As the Meridian prepared to join the Exodus home, Elena made a decision. She requested permission to stay aboard the ship and help coordinate the return. What she didn't tell anyone was her real plan. She was going to find a way to make sure humanity learned everything they could during their long silence. When they finally returned to the stars, they would be ready. The Great Silence was beginning. But Elena Vasquez would make sure it was not the end of humanity's story among the stars. Dr. Kenji Nakamura ran his fingers across the ancient stone tablet. The symbols carved into its surface were worn smooth by time, but he could still make out the strange markings. 19,000 years had passed since the Great Silence began, and he was one of the few humans who still studied the old alien languages. Any luck with the translation? Asked his assistant Maya Patel as she entered the underground laboratory. The research facility was built deep beneath the surface of Titan, one of Saturn's moons. Most of humanity now lived in the outer planets of their solar system, having learned to build amazing cities in space. Some, Kenji replied, not looking up from his work. The Kethanari language is incredibly complex. Each symbol can mean different things depending on the symbols around it. But I think this tablet is talking about something called the final song. Maya frowned. That sounds ominous. Kenji finally looked up. His hair was completely white, though he was only 40 years old. Studying alien languages for 2 decades had aged him. Everything about the Kethnari sounds ominous. But I don't think they were evil. I think they were scared. On the other side of the solar system, engineer Zara al-Rashid was floating in the observation deck of Deep Space Station 7. The station orbited at the very edge of human space, right up against the invisible barrier that kept them trapped in their home system. Zara had spent her entire life working on the deep space monitoring equipment. Her grandmother had built the first stations and her mother had improved them. Now it was Zara's turn to watch the galaxy beyond and wonder what was happening out there. Anything interesting today? Asked her partner James Wu as he floated up beside her. James worked on the computers that analyzed all the signals they picked up from space. Same as always, Zara said. The barrier is still there. Still can't see through it clearly, but... She paused, looking at the readings on her tablet. James, look at this. She showed him a graph covered in wavy lines. These are radio signals from the Andromeda Galaxy. See this pattern here? She pointed to a section where the lines suddenly went flat. 3,000 years ago, all the signals from that area just stopped. James studied the data. Equipment failure? That's what I thought at first. But look at this. Zara pulled up another chart. Signals from the Large Magellanic Cloud. Same thing about 2,000 years ago. And here, signals from the Triangulum Galaxy. Gone 1,500 years ago. James felt a chill run down his spine. It's like someone is turning off the lights one galaxy at a time. Or something is eating them, Zara whispered. Back on Titan, Kenji was having his own breakthrough. He had been working on the ancient tablet for months and suddenly the pieces were starting to fit together. Maya, come look at this, he called out excitedly. I think I know what the final song means. Maya hurried over to where Kenji was standing in front of a large screen covered with alien symbols. The Kethanari weren't just guardians of the galaxy, Kenji explained. They were refugees, the last survivors of something much older. Look at this symbol here. He pointed to a complex marking that looked like a spiral with teeth. This appears in every Kethanari text I've found. I think it represents something they were running from. Running from what? Maya asked. I'm not sure yet, but whatever it was, it consumed entire civilizations. The Kethanari called it the hunger that devours light. At that moment, alarms began ringing throughout the research station. Maya and Kenji looked at each other in confusion. Nothing ever happened on Titan. It was one of the safest places in the solar system. This is station control, a voice said over the speakers. All personnel report to emergency stations. We're receiving an impossible signal from Deep Space Station 7. Kenji and Maya rushed to the communication center. The main screen showed Zara al-Rashid's face, but the image was flickering and filled with static. This is Engineer al-Rashid. Zara's voice came through, broken and distorted. We're detecting something at the edge of our sensor range. Something that shouldn't be there. What kind of something? Asked the station commander. A ship, Zara replied. A human ship. But that's impossible. All human ships returned to the solar system 19,000 years ago. The screen flickered again and suddenly they could see what Zara was looking at. There, floating in the darkness at the very edge of human space, was a ship unlike anything they had ever seen. It was clearly built by humans, but it looked wrong somehow. Parts of it seemed to fade in and out of view, like it wasn't completely real. Can you identify the ship? The commander asked. Zara checked her instruments. According to the computer, it's the Meridian, the deep space research vessel that was lost during the Great Silence. Kenji felt his heart skip a beat. The Meridian was legendary. Every human child learned about it in school. It was the ship that had first made contact with the Kethanari, the ship that had helped humanity understand the choice they faced. But that's impossible, Maya whispered. The Meridian was lost 20,000 years ago. On the screen, they watched as the strange, ghostly ship slowly moved closer to the barrier that surrounded human space. As it approached, something incredible happened. The ship seemed to phase through the barrier like it wasn't there. How is that possible? The commander asked. Nothing can get through the Kethanari barrier. Zara's voice was filled with wonder and fear. I don't think this ship is entirely in our reality anymore. The sensors are showing readings I've never seen before. It exists in multiple dimensions at the same time. The Meridian continued its slow approach toward Deep Space Station 7. As it got closer, they could see that the ship had been changed. Its hull was covered in strange markings that pulsed with their own light. Parts of the ship seemed to be made of materials that didn't exist in normal space. We're receiving a transmission, Zara announced. Audio only. The communication center filled with a woman's voice, speaking clear English but with an accent no one could identify. This is Commander Sarah Chen Okafor of the deep space vessel Meridian, the voice said. I am requesting permission to dock with Deep Space Station 7. I bring urgent news from beyond the barrier. The station commander looked around at his staff in confusion. Chen Okafor? That's impossible. Captain Chen died during the Great Silence. Not Captain Chen, the voice replied as if she could hear their conversation. I am his great-great-granddaughter. My family has been exploring the spaces between realities for 20,000 years. We call ourselves the Wanderers. Kenji stepped forward. Commander, may I speak with her? I've been studying the Kethanari language and culture. I might be able to help, the commander nodded. Go ahead, Dr. Nakamura. Kenji activated his microphone. Commander Chen Okafor, this is Dr. Kenji Nakamura. Can you tell us where you've been for 20,000 years? There was a long pause before the reply came. We've been exploring parallel realities, Dr. Nakamura. Dimensions where history went differently, and I'm afraid we bring terrible news. What kind of news? Kenji asked. In every reality we've visited, every timeline we've explored, civilizations that accept the Kethnaris and forced silence eventually die out. They become weak, isolated, unable to defend themselves when the real threat arrives. Zara's voice cut in from Deep Space Station 7. What real threat? The same thing that destroyed the Kethnaris' original civilization, Commander Chen Okafor replied. The same thing that's been moving through the galaxies, consuming everything in its path. The Kethnari called it many names, but we know it best as the Devourers. Kenji felt the ancient tablet's warning suddenly make sense. The hunger that devours light, he whispered. Yes, came the reply. And according to our dimensional sensors, they're only 50 years away from reaching our galaxy. The 20,000-year silence is almost over, Dr. Nakamura. But humanity's real test is just beginning. The communication center fell silent as everyone absorbed this news. For 20,000 years, humanity had assumed the Great Silence was their punishment. Now they were learning it might have been their preparation. But preparation for what? And would they be ready when the time came? Outside, the phantom ship Meridian hung in space like a ghost from humanity's past, bringing news of a future that would test everything they had learned during their long exile among the stars. The docking process took 6 hours, and nothing about it was normal. The Meridian didn't connect to Deep Space Station 7 in any conventional way. Instead, it simply phased through the station's hull, creating a passage that shouldn't have been possible according to any known laws of physics. Zara al-Rashid stood in the main airlock, watching as reality seemed to bend around the arriving ship. The metal walls of the station became transparent where the Meridian touched them, like looking through water. She had been an engineer for 20 years, but nothing in her training had prepared her for this. Atmospheric pressure is stable, reported James Wu from his control station, but I'm getting readings that don't make sense. The air composition in the connection tunnel keeps changing. Changing how? Zara asked. It's like the air itself exists in multiple states at the same time, James replied, shaking his head. Sometimes it reads as normal human atmosphere. Sometimes it reads as something else entirely. The airlock hissed open and 3 figures stepped through. The first was clearly human, but something about her seemed different. Commander Sarah Chen Okafor was tall and graceful, with dark skin and silver hair that seemed to move in a wind that wasn't there. Her eyes held depths that suggested she had seen things no human should have seen. Behind her came 2 others who were definitely not entirely human anymore. One was a man whose skin had a faint blue tint and whose movements were too smooth, too perfect. The other was a woman whose hair floated around her head like she was underwater, and whose eyes occasionally showed flashes of light that came from within. Welcome to Deep Space Station 7, Zara said, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm Engineer Al-Rashid. Commander Chen Okafor smiled, and Zara noticed that her teeth seemed to shine with their own light. Thank you for allowing us to dock. I know our arrival must be disturbing. That's one word for it, Zara replied. How is your ship able to phase through solid matter? 20,000 years of traveling through dimensional space changes things, the blue-skinned man said. His voice had an odd echo to it. I'm Navigator Walsh. What you call solid matter, we've learned to see as just another state of energy. The woman with floating hair nodded. I'm Chief Science Officer Park. Reality is much more flexible than your physics textbooks suggest. When you've spent millennia moving between dimensions, you learn to exist in multiple states simultaneously. Dr. Kenji Nakamura arrived at the station 12 hours later, along with a team of scientists and government officials from throughout the solar system. The meeting was held in the station's largest conference room, but even that felt cramped with so many people floating in zero gravity. Before we begin, Commander Chen Okafor said, I need you to understand what has happened to us. The Meridian and its crew are no longer entirely part of your reality. She gestured, and the wall of the conference room became transparent, showing the view outside. But instead of the normal starfield, they could see multiple versions of space overlapping each other. In some views, the stars were different colors. In others, strange objects floated between the planets. We exist in what we call dimensional space, she explained. We can see and travel through multiple realities at the same time. It's how we survived the journey beyond the barrier. And it's how we learned what's really happening in the galaxy. Kenji leaned forward. What did you discover out there? Navigator Walsh answered. The Kethanari are gone. All of them. They died fighting something they couldn't defeat. Fighting what? Asked Maya Patel, who had accompanied Kenji to the meeting. Science Officer Park's hair swirled more rapidly. The Devourers. Beings that exist in the spaces between realities. They don't just destroy matter and energy. They consume the very concept of existence itself. The room fell silent as everyone tried to understand what that meant. Imagine, Commander Chen Okafor said, a fire that doesn't just burn a house down, but burns away the idea that the house ever existed. The Devourers do that to entire civilizations, entire planets, entire star systems. Zara felt sick. And they're coming here? They're already here in a sense, Navigator Walsh replied. We've detected their scouts probing the outer edges of the galaxy. The main force will arrive in approximately 50 years. Dr. Nakamura pulled out his tablet, showing the alien symbols he had been studying. Is this connected to what you're talking about? I've been translating Kethanari texts that mention something called the hunger that devours light. Commander Chen Okafor's expression grew grave. Show me. Kenji held up his tablet, displaying the ancient symbols. All three of the Wanderers reacted immediately. Science Officer Park's hair stopped floating and fell around her shoulders. Navigator Walsh's blue skin turned pale. Commander Chen Okafor closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Where did you find this? She asked. Ancient Kethanari archives, Kenji replied. There are fragments scattered throughout the solar system. Most people think they're just decorative artifacts. They're not decorative, the commander said. They're warnings and instructions. She gestured again, and the conference room filled with holographic images that seemed to come from nowhere. The images showed the galaxy as it had been 20,000 years ago, with the Kethanari civilization spread across hundreds of star systems. The Kethanari weren't the first civilization to face the Devourers, she explained. They were refugees from an even older civilization that was completely consumed. They spent millions of years preparing defenses, building weapons, training for the final battle. The images changed, showing massive crystal structures floating in space, energy beams that could reshape reality itself, and fleets of ships that moved between dimensions. They threw everything they had at the Devourers, Navigator Walsh continued, and they failed. But before they died, they managed to send a message across dimensional space. What kind of message? Zara asked. Science Officer Park's eyes flashed with inner light. Instructions for building a weapon that might actually work. But it requires something the Kethanari didn't have. Which is? Maya asked. Multiple species working together, Commander Chen Okafor replied. The weapon needs the combined psychic energy of different types of consciousness. The Kethanari were too similar to each other. They couldn't generate the complexity needed. Kenji felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in his mind. That's why they forced humanity into isolation. Not as punishment, but as protection. They needed us to survive and evolve separately. Exactly, the commander confirmed. And it wasn't just humanity. We've detected evidence that the Kethanari scattered dozens of species throughout the galaxy, each one isolated and protected while they developed their own unique forms of consciousness. But if that's true, Zara said, then where are these other species now? Hiding, Navigator Walsh replied. Just like humanity has been hiding, waiting for the signal that it's time to come together. What signal? Several people asked at once. Commander Chen Okafor smiled, and this time her smile seemed to light up the entire room. Us, the return of the Meridian. We've been traveling through dimensional space, visiting each hidden species, preparing them for what's coming. And now we're here to prepare humanity, Science Officer Park added, because the 50-year countdown starts now. The meeting continued for hours as the Wanderers shared everything they had learned during their 20,000-year journey. They showed videos of other surviving species, beings that looked like living crystals, creatures that existed as pure energy, entities that could shift between solid and gas at will. Each species has developed something unique during their isolation, Commander Chen Okafor explained. Humanity's gift is adaptability. You've learned to survive and thrive in any environment. That's exactly what we'll need when we face the Devourers. But first, Navigator Walsh said, we need to break the silence. We need to call out to the galaxy and rally all the hidden species. What about the Kethanari barrier? Maya asked. It's still in place around our solar system. Not anymore, Science Officer Park replied. The barrier has been slowly weakening as the Kethnari power sources died out. We estimate it will completely collapse within the next year. Zara looked out the transparent wall at the strange ship floating nearby. Parts of it were fading in and out of view, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. How do we know we can trust you? She asked. How do we know you're really human anymore? Commander Chen Okafor's expression grew sad. You don't. We've changed. We've had to change to survive what we've seen. But we're still fighting for humanity's future. We're still fighting for Earth. She gestured, and suddenly the room filled with images of Earth as it had been 20,000 years ago, blue and green and beautiful. Then the images changed to show Earth as it was now, transformed by millennia of careful environmental management into something even more beautiful. This is what we're fighting to protect, she said. Not just humanity, but the home that made humanity possible. The Devourers have consumed countless worlds, but they've never faced anything like what we're building here. What are we building? Kenji asked. Hope, Commander Chen Okafor replied. The first real hope the galaxy has had in millions of years. Outside, the phantom ship Meridian continued its strange dance between dimensions, a bridge between humanity's past and its uncertain future. The ancient Kethanari archive was hidden in a place that shouldn't have existed. Dr. Kenji Nakamura followed Commander Chen Okafor through a doorway in space itself, stepping from the Meridian's bridge into a vast library that floated in the void between dimensions. How is this possible? Kenji asked, his voice echoing strangely in the impossible space. Around them, crystalline shelves stretched up into infinity, filled with glowing data crystals that pulsed with their own light. The Kethanari built these archives in dimensional pockets, Navigator Walsh explained, his blue-tinted skin reflecting the strange light. Places that exist outside normal spacetime. They're scattered throughout the galaxy, hidden from the Devourers. Science Officer Park was already at work, her floating hair spreading out like sensors as she interfaced directly with the alien technology. I'm accessing the core files now. The Kethanari left detailed records of their war against the Devourers. Images began forming in the air around them. Kenji watched in fascination and horror as the holographic displays showed him the truth about the galaxy's history. The Devourers aren't from this reality, Park explained as the images shifted and changed. They come from the spaces between universes, the void that exists when nothing exists. They're attracted to consciousness, to life, to the very act of existence itself. Kenji saw civilizations that had lasted for millions of years wiped out in moments, entire star systems that simply stopped being, leaving behind empty space that hurt to look at. They don't just kill, Commander Chen Okafor said quietly. They negate. They remove things from reality so completely that it's as if those things never existed at all. But something must survive, Kenji said. Otherwise, how would anyone know they existed in the first place? Navigator Walsh nodded approvingly. Good question. The answer is that certain types of consciousness can resist negation. Beings that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously like us, and beings that have developed what the Kethnari called reality anchors. What's a reality anchor? Kenji asked. Science Officer Park gestured, and the images around them changed to show the human solar system. Look at what humanity has become during the 20,000-year silence. Kenji saw images of Earth, but not as he knew it. The planet was surrounded by a network of space stations and orbital habitats. The cities on the surface were built in harmony with nature, creating a perfect balance between technology and biology. Humanity didn't just survive their isolation, Park continued. They evolved. They learned to live in perfect harmony with their environment. They developed a form of consciousness that's deeply connected to their home reality. Every human now carries a piece of Earth's essence within them, Commander Chen Okafor explained. Your connection to your home planet is so strong that it anchors you to this reality. The Devourers can't simply negate you because you're too deeply rooted in existence itself. Meanwhile, back on Deep Space Station 7, engineer Zara al-Rashid was making her own discoveries. The station's sensors were picking up strange readings from throughout the galaxy, and what she was seeing didn't make sense. James, look at this, she called to her partner. I'm detecting massive energy signatures from systems that our records show as empty. James Wu floated over to her workstation. What kind of energy signatures? The same type we're seeing from the Meridian, Zara replied. Dimensional distortions. But there are dozens of them. scattered across the galaxy. She pulled up a three-dimensional map of the Milky Way. Dozens of points were flashing with the same strange energy pattern they had detected when the meridian arrived. They're all activating at the same time, James observed. Like they're responding to some kind of signal, or like they're all part of the same network, Zara said thoughtfully. At that moment, their communication system activated. Commander Chen Okafor's voice came through from the dimensional archive. Engineer Al-Rashid, are you monitoring the galactic sensor net? Yes, Commander, Zara replied. We're seeing massive energy signatures throughout the galaxy. Those are the other hidden species, Chen Okafor explained. They're emerging from their own periods of isolation. The Kethnari scattered them across the galaxy, just like they isolated humanity. In the archive, Kenji was learning about these other species. The holographic display showed him beings unlike anything he had ever imagined. The Veltar exist as living crystal matrices, Science Officer Park explained, showing images of beings that looked like geometric sculptures made of light. They think in mathematical concepts and can calculate reality itself. The HFY are energy beings who abandoned physical form millions of years ago, Navigator Walsh added, gesturing to images of creatures that looked like dancing flames. They can manipulate electromagnetic fields on a galactic scale. And the Morden exist in a state of constant flux, Commander Chen Okafor said, showing images of beings that seem to be made of liquid starlight. They can adapt to any environment instantly. Kenji felt overwhelmed by the scope of what he was learning. How many species are there? 43 that we know of, Park replied. Each one developed during their isolation period. Each one represents a different aspect of consciousness, a different way of experiencing reality. The Kethnari's plan was brilliant, Commander Chen Okafor said. They realized that the only way to defeat the Devourers was to create a weapon powered by the combined consciousness of dozens of different species. No single species could generate enough complexity, but together we might have a chance, Kenji finished. The archive around them began to pulse with brighter light. New images appeared showing detailed schematics for a device that Kenji couldn't even begin to understand. This is the weapon, Navigator Walsh said. The Kethnari called it the reality anchor. It doesn't destroy the Devourers, it transforms them. Transforms them how? Kenji asked. The Devourers exist in a state of pure negation, Science Officer Park explained. They consume existence because they can't experience it themselves. The weapon gives them what they've been searching for, which is connection, Commander Chen Okafor said simply. The ability to exist as part of reality instead of outside it. Kenji stared at the weapon schematics. They showed a device that looked like a massive musical instrument, with components designed to amplify and harmonize different types of consciousness. It's like a symphony, he whispered. Exactly, Park said. A consciousness symphony with each species contributing their own unique note. When all 44 species sing together, 44, Kenji asked. You said there were 43, Commander Chen Okafor smiled. 43 hidden species plus humanity makes 44, but humanity has a special role. What role? Conductor, she replied. Humanity's gift for adaptation makes them perfect for coordinating the efforts of all the other species. You'll be the ones who bring everyone together. Back on the station, Zara was watching as more and more energy signatures appeared on her sensors. The galaxy was waking up after 20,000 years of forced sleep. How long before they all emerge? She asked through the communication link. The process has already begun, Commander Chen Okafor replied from the archive. Within 1 year, all 43 species will have fully emerged from hiding. That's when the real work begins. What real work? Zara asked. Building the weapon, Navigator Walsh answered. It requires components that can only be created by working together. The Veltar will provide the mathematical framework. The HFY will supply the energy matrix. The Morden will create the adaptive interfaces. And humanity? Kenji asked. Humanity will provide the consciousness network that ties it all together, Science Officer Park replied. Your ability to form connections with other species is unique in the galaxy. The archive began to fade around them as their time in the dimensional pocket came to an end. But before they returned to normal space, Commander Chen Okafor showed Kenji one final image. It was the Devourers themselves, and they were closer than anyone had expected. They've already consumed 3 galaxy clusters beyond the Milky Way, she said. And they're accelerating. We have 47 years, not 50. Kenji felt a chill run through him. Will that be enough time? It has to be, Commander Chen Okafor replied. Because if we fail, not just our galaxy dies. The Devourers will consume every reality that has ever existed or ever could exist. As they stepped back through the dimensional doorway onto the Meridian's bridge, Kenji carried with him the weight of impossible knowledge. Humanity was about to become the conductor of the greatest symphony ever attempted. A song that would either save all existence or watch it disappear into the void. The 20,000-year silence was ending. Soon humanity would have to find its voice and teach the galaxy how to sing together. The fate of every reality depended on getting the music right. The decision came after 3 months of debate that shook the entire solar system. In the Great Assembly Hall floating above Earth's North Pole, representatives from every human colony, every space station, every orbital habitat gathered to make the most important choice in their species' history. Dr. Kenji Nakamura stood before the assembly, holding a device that looked like a crystal flower. Inside the crystal, a faint light pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost alive. This contains the preserved consciousness of Dr. Elena Vasquez, he announced to the thousands of floating delegates. She was the xenobiologist who first made contact with the Kethnari 20,000 years ago. Her mind has been maintained in quantum stasis aboard the Meridian. The assembly hall fell silent. Everyone had heard of Elena Vasquez, but most had assumed she was long dead. She is asked to address the assembly, Kenji continued, to share what she learned during humanity's first contact with alien intelligence. The crystal flower opened like a blooming blossom, and suddenly the hall filled with a woman's voice. It was clear and strong, carrying across 20 millennia as if no time had passed at all. My fellow humans, Elena's voice said, I have watched our species grow and change during our long isolation. I have seen you learn to live in harmony with your environment, to build cities that enhance rather than destroy, to reach for the stars while keeping your feet planted in the soil of home. Holographic images began forming around the hall, showing Earth as it was now. The planet was more beautiful than ever, its cities integrated seamlessly with restored forests and clean oceans. The Kethnari gave us this gift of isolation not as punishment, but as preparation, Elena continued. They knew that only a species that had learned to live in true balance could hope to stand against the Devourers. Commander Sarah Chen Okafor floated near the speaker's platform, her silver hair moving in impossible currents. Dr. Vasquez's consciousness has been connected to the Meridian's dimensional sensors for 20,000 years. She has observed the galaxy's hidden civilizations, watched the Devourers approach, and helped plan humanity's role in the coming battle. What role? Asked President Martinez, Earth's elected leader. She was a woman in her 70s whose family had guided humanity through 3 centuries of careful environmental restoration. Elena's voice responded immediately. Conductor of the greatest symphony ever attempted. 43 alien species have been developing in isolation, each one representing a different aspect of consciousness. Humanity's role is to bring them all together. And if we refuse? Asked Senator Kim from the Jupiter colonies. What if we choose to remain silent and hope the Devourers pass us by? The crystal flower pulsed brighter. Then everything dies, Elena said simply. Not just our galaxy, but every reality that has ever existed. The Devourers don't just consume matter and energy. They consume the very possibility of existence itself. Engineer Zara al-Rashid activated her communication link from Deep Space Station 7. We're detecting movement at the galactic edge, she reported. Something is coming through from intergalactic space. The main display screen showed her sensor readings. Dark shapes were moving between the stars at the galaxy's rim, but they weren't ships in any conventional sense. They looked like holes in reality itself, spaces where nothing existed. Devourer scouts, Commander Chen Okafor confirmed. They arrived decades before the main force, testing the galaxy's defenses, mapping its consciousness networks. President Martinez looked around the assembly hall at the faces of humanity's representatives. How long do we have to make this decision? The decision has already been made, Elena's voice said. Not by politicians or scientists, but by the galaxy itself. Look at your sensor readings, Engineer al-Rashid. Zara checked her instruments and gasped. The barrier around our solar system, it's collapsing. The Kethnari power sources are finally failing. Commander Chen Okafor explained. Within days, the barrier will be completely gone. We'll be visible to the galaxy for the first time in 20,000 years, which means, Elena continued, that we either choose to break our silence and call the galaxy together, or we wait for the devourers to find us hiding here like frightened children. The debate that followed was intense but brief. Speaker after speaker rose to voice their fears, their hopes, their desperate desire to protect the beautiful world humanity had built during their isolation. Dr. Maya Patel, now in her 60s and serving as Kenji's senior research partner, stood to address the assembly. I've spent my entire career studying the fragments of Kethnari knowledge we've found throughout the solar system. Every piece of evidence points to the same conclusion. The only way to survive is to fight together. But what if we're wrong? Asked Admiral Chen from the Mars Defense Fleet. What if breaking the silence just draws the devourers to us faster? Then we die fighting instead of dying afraid, replied Commander Chen Okafor. I've seen what happens to civilizations that try to hide from the devourers. They don't just die. They're erased so completely that they never existed at all. The vote, when it finally came, was unanimous. Humanity would break the Great Silence. The preparation took only hours. Across the solar system, every communication array, every deep space transmitter, every quantum resonance broadcaster was linked together in a network that spanned from Mercury to the outer reaches of the Kuiper Belt. Kenji stood in the primary transmission facility on Luna, surrounded by equipment that could send messages across the galaxy. In his hands, he held a device that contained every piece of Kethnari language and culture that humanity had preserved. "Are you ready?" asked Zara from her station at the edge of the solar system. "As ready as we can be," Kenji replied. Elena's voice came through the quantum matrix one more time. "Remember, this isn't just a call for help. This is humanity's introduction to the galactic community. Make it count." Kenji activated the transmission array. Every piece of human technology capable of sending signals into space came online simultaneously. The message went out on every frequency, in every language humanity had ever spoken, and in the complex harmonics of the Kethnari tongue. "This is Dr. Kenji Nakamura, speaking for humanity," his voice said, carried by waves that would reach every corner of the galaxy. "We are the children of Earth, the species that was silenced for 20,000 years. We call to our hidden brothers and sisters among the stars. The time of silence is over. The time of the final song has begun." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within minutes, signals began flooding in from across the galaxy. The Veltar responded first, their mathematical consciousness singing in frequencies that made human computers weep with joy. The Jef followed, their energy being voices creating aurora displays in every human habitat. 43 species are responding, Zara reported, her voice filled with wonder. "They're all coming out of hiding." On the main display, the galaxy lit up like a festival. Energy signatures blazed to life in systems that had seemed empty for millennia. Ships began moving between the stars, heading toward a rendezvous point that the Kethnari had chosen long ago. "The Morden are transmitting construction blueprints," reported Science Officer Park from the Meridian. "They're sharing the plans for the consciousness amplifiers we'll need. The Veltar are sending mathematical frameworks for reality manipulation," added Navigator Walsh. "This is incredible. They've solved equations that our best physicists thought were impossible." But not all the responses were friendly. Some signals carried warnings, fears, accusations that humanity had doomed the galaxy by breaking the silence too soon. "They're scared," Elena's voice observed. 20,000 years of hiding has made some of them paranoid. They'll need to be convinced that unity is their only hope. Commander Chen Okafor activated the Meridian's dimensional viewing systems. "Look at the galactic edge," she said. The display showed the dark shapes moving faster now, responding to the sudden burst of galactic communication. The Devourer scouts were heading toward the center of the galaxy, drawn by the symphony of voices that had suddenly broken 20 millennia of silence. "How long before they reach us?" President Martinez asked. 18 months for the scouts, Chen Okafor replied. 3 years for the main force. Will that be enough time to build the weapon? Maya asked. Elena's consciousness pulsed brighter in its crystal matrix. It has to be, because if we fail, there won't be another chance. The Devourers have consumed 17 galaxies. The Milky Way is their final target in this region of the universe. As the hours passed, more and more alien species emerged from their hiding places. Each one brought unique technologies, strange sciences, impossible abilities that defied human understanding. The Kethnari plan was working. After 20,000 years of preparation, the galaxy's hidden children were finally coming together. But in the depths of space, the dark shapes moved faster, hungry for the consciousness that had dared to sing again after so long a silence. The greatest symphony in the universe was about to begin, and everyone, both the singers and those who would devour the song, was rushing toward the final performance. Humanity had found its voice again. Now they had to teach the galaxy how to sing in harmony before the silence fell forever.